Welcome to Local Level Safe Environment Coordinator Training for the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston. This training is being provided by the Office of Safe Environment at the Chancery, in particular Sharon Gowdy and Dee Dean. Thank you for agreeing to be a Local Level Safe Environment Coordinator. We greatly appreciate your commitment to keeping children safe as well as employees and volunteers. The Safe Environment Protocol is a mandate for all dioceses across the United States, and it's a mandate from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. It's not negotiable. The Safe Environment Protocol has been in effect actually for more than 2 decades in all dioceses, again, across America. There are 2 primary components to the Safe Environment Protocol, and that is a protocol for adults, number 1, and a protocol for children in grades K through 12, number 2. There's also a very robust audit component, data collection audit and on-site audit that we undertake every year to ensure implementation and compliance with the Safe Environment mandate. Just a quick history as to how offices of safe environment came to be in dioceses all across the United States. The 1950s to the early 2000s were the decades whereby the clergy sex abuse crisis in the Catholic Church occurred and then came to light. By the late 1990s and the early 2000s, the crisis really came into the public forefront. If you recall a movie called Spotlight, which was based on an investigative article in the Boston Globe regarding the clergy sex abuse crisis in Boston, this article really served as the catalyst that brought the issue of the prior decades of clergy sex abuse into the public realm, into the public forefront. At this time in the late 1990s and the early 2000s, the crisis was also extensively studied by experts, in particular at the City University of New York's John Jay College of Criminal Justice. This extensive study resulted in a comprehensive report called the John Jay Report, which is public. You can look it up online and read it in its entirety. I believe it's also housed on the USCCB's website, and it's also housed on the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston's website. So that report would go on to serve as the catalyst for the Charter for the Protection of Children and Young People, which in turn served as the catalyst for safe environment programs all across the United States. In 2002, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops created that Charter for the Protection of Children and Young People as a response to the crisis. Part of the charter mandates safe environment programs for all dioceses in the United States. It's actually the heart of the charter, and the Office of Safe Environment in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston was established accordingly. Offices of Safe Environment were established 2 decades ago, more than 2 decades ago, as a response to the clergy sex abuse crisis. But we know now, after many, many years of experience, that the Catholic Church is actually now a leader in the protection of children and vulnerable adults, despite our history and despite the protocol having been started as a means to prevent clergy sex abuse. Today, it actually encompasses a wide range of behavioral concerns, not only with clergy, but with employees and volunteers as well. Today, the Safe Environment Protocol is actually in alignment with other organizations, religious and secular, on best practices for reducing risk and raising awareness. There are many, many, many organizations all across the United States that are interested in reducing risk and raising awareness. The Catholic Church just happened to be, because of our history, one of the first organizations on that front to implement a formal program. So the Safe Environment Protocol is, of course, designed to protect children and vulnerable adults, but when those best practices are followed, when those policies are adhered to, it is also designed to protect our employees and our volunteers as well. Local level coordinators at our parishes and schools, or any other diocesan entity that undertakes the Safe Environment Program, they have a very important job. It's up to the principal and/or the pastor to designate a local level coordinator for the parish or school. This job can be undertaken by one person who is a paid employee. It can be undertaken by two people who are paid employees, by a paid employee and a volunteer, or two volunteers, depending on the size of your parish or school. It could be one person, or it could be a job share. We are happy to accommodate whatever works best for your parish or school. Just please make sure to tell us at the Chancery who your local level coordinator is. That will allow us to know who to communicate with should something safe environment related arise. Local level coordinators are responsible for ensuring that all the employees and volunteers at the school or the parish or the diocesan entity are compliant with safe environment, and that compliance is recorded and documented in the Virtus system. We have a fair number of parishes and schools where the local level coordinator is the principal or the pastor, and that's by their choice. If you don't have a local level coordinator at your parish or school, one needs to be appointed without delay, and please let us know who that is. Principals and pastors are always welcome to have access to the Virtus system so that they can see and access everything the local level coordinator sees and accesses. Anyone at the parish or school or diocesan entity level who needs that access to see what's going on with safe environment compliance, please just call us and we can get you that access through your Virtus account. No matter who the local level coordinator is, it is ultimately the principal and or pastor who are responsible for safe environment compliance or the lack thereof. One of the most important things a local level coordinator does is work with parish and school leaders to identify who's employed at the parish or school and who is volunteering at the parish or school. It's very important that you communicate with your various ministry leaders to understand and know who is actually employed and volunteering in this location, whether it's a parish or school. Once you figure out who your employees and volunteers actually are, then you're going to ensure that your employees and volunteers are compliant with the Safe Environment Protocol. Once all of your employees and volunteers are compliant with that protocol, then you're going to need to monitor compliance. Through the Virtus system, compliance is for the most part automated in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston, but there are going to be times where you maybe need to initiate some renewal or updating of requirements when it's necessary. You're going to maintain accurate compliance data in the Virtus platform, and you're going to work with your principals and priests to prepare for yearly data collection audits and yearly on-site audits. Any outreach material that we have made available for our volunteer and employees, you would make sure that that information is also made available at the parish or school when necessary, and you're going to ensure that your DREs and your teachers in your Catholic schools are teaching the teaching safety program for children and recording and documenting it. Any issues that may come up relative to safe environment, such as disclosures, any other behavioral concerns that may or may not need reported, those kind of things you're going to be communicating with the Office of Safe Environment here at the Chancery. Sometimes that's done in concert with your priest and or your principal. Sometimes the local level coordinator just reaches out and talks to us. Sometimes they do it with the principal or the priest, and sometimes the coordinator alerts the principal or the priest, and the principal or the priest will call us. Either way, we're happy to work with and communicate however best works for your location. And regarding all of our resources, regarding all of the preparation for the yearly data collection audits and the yearly on-site audits, we have outreach material that can help you along with those things, and we here at the Chancery level are here to help you along with those things as well in your role as local level coordinator. Now that we've talked about the duties of a safe environment local level coordinator, let's talk about what actually constitutes safe environment compliance in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston for adults. This is going to be regarding our adult volunteers and employees. So the first thing we have is completion of Virtus awareness training on a yearly basis for all employees and volunteers. In 2024, effective May 2024, the Bishop instituted yearly awareness training as a requirement. We are no longer a one and done diocese for training. If you've been around for a while, you know that prior to May 2024, we were what was considered a one and done diocese for training, meaning our employees and volunteers completed training, an awareness training module one time, and then they were done. That time is over. Effective May 2024, we now require yearly awareness training for employees and volunteers. The second component of safe environment compliance in our diocese is completion of a background check every 3 years for employees and volunteers. The third component of safe environment that is required involves our sex abuse policy. The Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston has a formal sex abuse policy. Stemming from that policy are 3 forms to sign and acknowledge: the policy form, the code of conduct, and the reporting statute for the state of West Virginia. In addition to those 3 main components, completion of awareness training, completion of a background check, and signed acknowledgments and policy documents. In addition to all of those, our clergy and our Catholic school personnel are required to be fingerprinted every 3 years. Volunteers and employees who are not clergy and who are not employed with Catholic schools are not required to be fingerprinted. Fingerprinting is only for clergy and Catholic school personnel every 3 years. Also, if you have folks who just come to Mass, and they come to Mass, they attend Mass, they go home, they come to your fish fry, they go home, they come to your parish festival, they go home, they are just parishioners who come to Mass and partake of the activities that you provide, safe environment does not apply to those people. You have to be an employee or a volunteer for safe environment to apply. Your folks who just come to Mass and go home, who just come to your activities and partake and go home, safe environment does not apply to them. Safe environment applies only to employees or volunteers. Some parishes and schools have minors who work or volunteer at the parish or school. We welcome this. There are a lot of programs where our minors can gain experience and participate in parish or school life ways that are very fulfilling, educational, and helpful to the school or parish. This is a good thing. However, the Safe Environment Protocol is designed to protect minors, so it does not apply to them, and minors are not required to comply with safe environment. What you are required when you are engaging minors in volunteer or work activities is to provide the appropriate level of safe environment compliant adult supervision when minors are volunteering or working. As a reminder, a minor is anyone younger than age 18. An adult is anyone who is age 18 or older. Safe environment applies to adult employees and volunteers age 18 or older. There is one exception to this guideline, and that is for students who are still enrolled in school, likely grade 12. They're seniors in high school, but they have turned 18. The system is still designed to protect them while they are in K through 12 school. Any employee or volunteer who is 18 or older and has graduated from grade 12 is considered an adult, and safe environment does apply. But while an employee or volunteer is still in school, still in high school, but they've turned 18, this system's still designed to protect them. But once they've turned 18 and moved on, let's say they've gone to college, they've gone to trade school, they've gone to the military, they've gone into the workforce, they are out of the K through 12 system, but they've turned 18, they are considered an adult, and if they are volunteering or working, then safe environment does apply. We always make the most current list of roles that are required to comply with safe environment available on the diocesan website, www.dwc.org, under offices, then safe environment, then download files and forms. In the back of the policy book, you are always going to find the most current list of roles that are required to comply with safe environment in the back of that policy booklet that is always housed online. If you have that page bookmarked, that diocesan website page bookmarked for safe environment files and forms in any way, please make sure that you periodically refresh it to ensure that all updates are conveyed. As with the policy booklet information we just talked about, actually all of our safe environment forms and information, all of that is available on the diocesan website, www.dwc.org, under diocese, then offices, and then the safe environment section in the drop-down menu. Down the left side of that page are links to resources and forms for downloading. And again, please rest assured that all forms housed there are always the most current version. And like with any other page that you're going to look at, if you have it bookmarked, please periodically refresh it to ensure that you're getting the most up-to-date information. The Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston uses some different vendors regarding safe environment. Screening One is our background check provider. Every parish and school has a login and password specific to the parish or school, not to any one person. Screening One's login and password are specific to the location, not to an individual. Virtus is our awareness training provider and the platform we use to document and track compliance. And for Virtus, each individual user has a login and a password that is specific to the individual person. Unlike Screening One, where the login and password are specific to the location, with Virtus, your login and password are specific to each individual user. Corporate Security Investigation, CSI. CSI is our fingerprint vendor. And if you recall from earlier in the presentation, we only require fingerprints for clergy and Catholic school personnel. So CSI does not have a platform that you would log into. Please just know that they are our fingerprint vendor for clergy and school personnel and some certain high-level Chancery staff. We do fingerprint here at the Chancery. Volunteers and other employees who do not work in Catholic schools or who are not clergy, just as a reminder, they are not fingerprinted. And Corporate Security Investigations does not have a platform that you would need to look at or log into in any way. Virtus and Screening One are integrated to some extent, depending on how an employee or volunteer elects to complete the process to come into compliance. If they elect to do it all electronically online through their Virtus account, then Virtus and Screening One are integrated and they can complete their requirements, including a background check, online. However, there are times when a local level coordinator may need to undertake manual entry of the various requirements into Virtus to include the background check directly into Screening One. CSI is not integrated with any of our systems. As I said, that's not a platform that you ever need to worry about or log on to. And we will have some more on these various platforms and their technicalities later on in the presentation. We will dive deeper into these technical issues and how to use these platforms as we progress through the presentation. Timelines for safe environment compliance include background checks every 3 years for all employees and volunteers, awareness training, completion of awareness training every year, and policy and related documents as needed. If we make any major shifts and major changes to policy in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston, those documents would need to be redistributed. Fingerprinting, remember, every 3 years, but only for Catholic school personnel and clergy. Employees and volunteers who are not Catholic school personnel or clergy do not have to be fingerprinted. As we've discussed throughout the presentation, safe environment-wise, you are going to be concerned with employees and with volunteers. Safe environment applies to employees and volunteers. Remember, safe environment does not apply to your regular old parishioners who just show up for Mass or just show up for your fish fries or just, show up for your festivals and partake in parish life as participants and then they go home. Safe environment does not apply to them. As a reminder, we are concerned primarily with employees and volunteers when it comes to safe environment. That's the mechanism for safe environment to apply. You got to be an employee, you got to be a volunteer, and you have to be an adult. So an employee is a person who provides a service to a diocesan entity and is paid money. Now, in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston, that is most readily accomplished through the Paylocity platform that we use. If you're an employee, you know that you have a Paylocity account and you're paid, you request time off. You can manage your employment as an employee in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston through Paylocity. But we also have coaches, for example, who may not be in Paylocity, but they receive a one-time stipend at the end of the season or at the end of the year or at the end of the semester or whenever they receive their stipend. And I use coaches as an example because that's the most readily example of an employee who is paid but not through Paylocity. So for employee status, you've got a person who provides a service to the diocese and is paid money, whether that's through Paylocity or whether that's through a one-time stipend or whether you have an agreement with Human Resources and you pay them some other way, they are paid. A volunteer is a person who provides a service to your parish or school or diocesan entity at no charge. The Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston has a zero tolerance policy for sex abuse offenses that return on background checks. Registered sex offenders and anybody else who have had a sex abuse related finding on their background check are prohibited from working or volunteering in our diocese. Any findings on a background check other than sex abuse related offenses are considered on a case-by-case basis by the priest and or the principal. The priest and or principal may determine that despite the finding, the person is suitable for working or volunteering in the parish or school setting. A principal or priest may look at the background check finding and determine that the person can work or volunteer in the diocese with some parameters. We know that the church can be an important part of the rehabilitative process for a lot of people, and we respect that. So it's going to be up to the priests or the principals, or the priests and principals together, to determine what a person can or can't do in the parish or school based on the finding or findings that were returned on background checks. Any priest or principals who need help making that determination are always certainly welcome to contact Human Resources or Safe Environment, or both. We are always happy to advise on best practices and, based on our experience, what might work, what might not work. So please reach out if there are any questions relative to a background check finding and what a person can or can't do in a parish or school. There are three primary ways to come into compliance for Safe Environment in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston. The first is electronic and online. It is the quickest and easiest way to achieve compliance, and volunteers and employees do that by going to Virtus Online, creating an account, and completing all the requirements on time from start to finish, from the comfort of their own home or from wherever they have an internet connection. If you are a new employee or a new volunteer, you would be creating a new account. If you are an existing volunteer or an existing employee, you would be logging on to your existing account and completing any requirements that are due for renewal or updating. The overwhelming majority of employees and volunteers in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston come into compliance and maintain their compliance this way. Another method for coming into compliance is in person. A parish or school may elect to hold an in-person Virtus session where volunteers or employees come in and they utilize paper and complete their forms in writing manually, paper format, and the training module, the Virtus training module, is delivered via a video that everyone watches as a group. At an in-person session, completion of the training video and all of the paperwork that the employees and volunteers filled out, it's all then manually recorded in the Virtus system by the local level coordinator for each person. The third option is new to us. It's the printed materials option. This has turned out to be a very popular option for our volunteers who don't have computers or access to the internet, or who are simply uncomfortable using computers or the internet. And it involves a paper transcript of the video training. So employees and volunteers who elect the printed materials option, they will be completing their forms on paper, just like an in-person session. They are writing on the forms, they're completing their forms on paper, and then they would be receiving a paper transcript of the video training to read. Along with that paper transcript of the video training, they're going to fill out a verification form that is completed and signed and affirms that they received and read the paper transcript of the video training. And as with an in-person session, all other requirements are completed using the paper forms, and the local level coordinator manually records all of those compliance dates for each person in the Virtus system. As we've discussed, when it comes to safe environment in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston, you are going to be concerned as a local level coordinator with employees, and you're going to be concerned with volunteers. There are very different processes that you need to undertake when you are talking about employees versus volunteers. If you have a person that you are considering hiring, you have a prospective employee, you are always going to want to run a background check first before you do anything else. You will give that prospective employee a paper background check form to complete. You will enter the information into Screening 1 manually, run that background check, get the results back before any offer of employment or hiring occurs. Once the background check results come back and you feel that you've progressed to the point of hire, then you would complete an onboarding form that you get from Human Resources and send that onboarding form back to Human Resources. HR, in turn, will email an onboarding link to the employee to complete all HR forms electronically. Any other HR-related training would be completed electronically through that onboarding link. And the safe environment process is also going to be embedded in that onboarding link. So if you have an employee who, you have a person who's progressed to the point of hire, you've run the background check first, the results have come back, HR has provided an onboarding link, there will be a mechanism in that onboarding link for the person to complete the safe environment process online. Once all onboarding tasks are completed and you get the okay from HR, then the person is officially able to be considered hired and able to start working. There is an exception to this process for employees that we will talk about later in the technical section when we get to that part of the presentation, and it involves someone who perhaps was a volunteer prior to becoming an employee and they have an existing Virtus account. And so later in the presentation, we can go over how to handle the circumstance whereby you have a person who was a volunteer and now you're hiring them and they've already got the safe environment protocol completed. If you have a volunteer, it's going to be very, very easy. They can just go to virtusonline.org and complete the entire process from start to finish online anywhere they have an internet connection, and documentation will be automatic. Or they can attend, as discussed in a prior slide, an in-person session, or they can complete the printed materials version of the training and all of their other requirements and forms in paper version. And remember, any requirements that are completed via paper, as the local level coordinator, you would be responsible for manually recording and documenting those requirements in the Virtus system for each person who does not complete those requirements online. So employee, you're hiring someone, always do the background check first. Once the results come back, they progress to the point of hire, you're going to reach out to HR, complete an onboarding form. HR in turn will send the employee a link to complete all of the requirements electronically, including safe environment. And once all of that is complete, then the person is able to start working. Please do not have the person start working prior to the hiring and onboarding process being complete. Volunteers, a whole lot easier. They can just go to virtusonline.org, complete the entire process online, or complete the requirements on paper. Just another word about hiring before we move on. If your candidate for employment does not already have an existing Virtus account, you do not need to send your candidate to the Virtus website to complete the process prior to being hired. All of those safe environment requirements will be embedded in the onboarding link that your candidate receives from HR. In fact, you sending your candidate to complete the safe environment requirements outside of the onboarding link actually has the potential to create more work for us as administrators and for you as local level coordinators through the duplicate Virtus account phenomenon. We don't want any duplicate Virtus accounts being created. Whenever duplicate accounts are created, that means more work for us on our end as administrators and local level coordinators. So if your candidate does not already have an existing Virtus account, please just let them go through the onboarding link that they will receive via HR. That will contain all of the safe environment requirements embedded in that onboarding link. Now, if your candidate for employment was a prior volunteer, and sometimes that happens, and that's great. We have volunteers who progress to employees all the time. That's not a problem. If your candidate for employment was a prior volunteer and already has a Virtus account, then you need to let Human Resources know that so that they can suspend whatever safe environment requirements have already been met in the onboarding link. So if you've got a person who was a prior volunteer, you're now thinking about hiring them, just let HR know and they can suspend any training requirements or policy requirements that are already up to date and on file. They can suspend those requirements from the onboarding link. Either way, whether you have no history with your candidate for employment or whether your candidate for employment was a volunteer, either way, a current employment package background check must be on file prior to hiring. So even if you have a volunteer who has a volunteer level background check on file, you're going to want to make sure that that volunteer has a current employment package background on check on file prior to being brought on as a hire and brought on to payroll. So no history with the candidate, they're going to get that employment level background check anyway. And if you have a volunteer who you're considering hiring, you still have to make sure, even if they're all compliant already with safe environment, you still have to make sure that your volunteer has a current employment package background check on file prior to hiring. For your purpose as local level coordinators, you're going to have two choices when you're running background checks. It's either going to be an employment level background check or it's going to be a volunteer level background check. If you are considering hiring someone, select the employment package. If someone is coming into your parish or school to volunteer, select the volunteer package. And just a reminder, as I discussed in the prior slide, please do not hire someone based on a volunteer package. If you are hiring someone, there must be a current and completed employment level background check package on file. And we will get into the technicalities later on in the presentation on actually how to run a background check. Just another reminder, if you are hiring someone, you must run an employment level background check first before anything else occurs. Once you run that employment level background check for your potential hire and the results have returned, please reach out to Human Resources at the Chancery for further instruction. You'll be required to fill out an onboarding form, and then your candidate will receive an onboarding link via email, which will contain other tasks and documents, including the safe environment process, that need to be completed by your candidate for hire. A lot of hiring authorities, this is where they get into trouble. They will bring the person in, they will bring their candidate for hire in and let them start working and let them start doing things prior to the employment level background check and prior to onboarding being completed. Please do not do this. Please ensure that you run that background check first, get the results back, and then you and your candidate need to go through the onboarding process and have all of those tasks completed before your candidate can start working. The Office of Safe Environment has how-to resources for your people to walk them through the process of creating a Virtus account and completing their safe environment requirements online. These how-to resources are always housed on dwc.org, the diocesan website, under the Safe Environment section, in particular the download files and forms link. The person simply follows the instructions on the sheet. There are written words and instructions on the sheet, and there are screenshots and pictures that will help guide a person through creating an account and completing the safe environment requirements through Virtus. Now, if you have a candidate for employment, as discussed, those requirements for safe environment are going to be embedded in their onboarding link, and your candidate for employment can certainly also follow along on the how-to resources, whether they're a volunteer going straight to Virtus or whether they're a candidate for employment getting their onboarding link to complete their requirements. Either way, they can follow those how-to resources to complete their safe environment requirements. When safe environment requirements are completed online through the Virtus system, they are automatically documented by the system. The electronic process is available through Virtus Online 24/7 from anywhere you have an internet connection, and the overwhelming majority, probably 80% of the people in our diocese who are required to complete the safe environment process do so online. The overwhelming majority complete this process online, and it's very quick and easy. If you elect to bring your people into compliance through the in-person process, you would need to notify us here at the Chancery in the Office of Safe Environment that an in-person session is needed. You would work with us here at the Chancery to settle on a date, time, and location for your in-person session, and then we will create the session in the Virtus system. Safe Environment would provide you in turn with instructions and a thumb drive with the video training for how to conduct the in-person session at your parish or school. You would print all the forms you need. We send you the thumb drive with the video on it. The in-person session is held on the scheduled date and at the scheduled location and the scheduled time. The forms are filled out and the training video is played. Background checks. Following the in-person session, background checks are entered manually, and dates of completion for all requirements for each attendee are documented in the Virtus system by the local level coordinator. The printed materials process for coming into compliance is going to be much like the in-person process, except you're not going to play the video. You're going to provide your folks with all of the paper forms that they need to come into compliance. And you're going to, instead of playing the video for the group, you're going to distribute the transcript of the video training along with the paper verification form. That printed material is going to be on paper, that transcript's going to be on paper, and you'll have a verification form as well. Your people will complete all their forms, they'll complete the verification form and return everything to the parish or school. The parish or school will send the printed material verification form to the Office of Safe Environment for documentation and digitization, and you will enter and record all the other forms and requirements, background and policy related, manually as the local level coordinator for each person. When the bishop decided to implement continuing education in May of 2024, he was very specific that he wanted all employees and volunteers to complete yearly awareness training as well as monthly bulletins, both provided by our awareness training provider, Virtus. Both are accessed through a person's Virtus account, or going forward, as we've discussed, printed material will be an option for completing the requirements. The module is the Protecting God's Children module. That is the primary sex abuse awareness training module that can be completed online, in person, or via printed material. And this is the training that is now required by the bishop on a yearly basis for employees and volunteers in accordance with diocesan policy. The monthly bulletins are very short articles that usually take a couple of minutes to read and are designed to provide helpful tips and insights and prevention methods for keeping people safe. Virtus releases one bulletin per month. Respecting the bishop's wishes for yearly training modules to be completed by all employees and volunteers, and all employees and volunteers to have access to the monthly bulletin, but also recognizing that keeping track of compliance for completing the monthly bulletins for all employees and volunteers would be very burdensome to our local level coordinators. We have determined and decided that monthly bulletins will not be tied to compliance. Everyone will have access to the monthly bulletins, but the monthly bulletins will not be tied to compliance. The yearly training module is not negotiable, and it will be tied to compliance. The overwhelming majority of employees and volunteers can access the monthly bulletins through their Virtus account. For those who, again, are not comfortable using the internet or who do not have computers or internet access, the parish or school should print out some copies of the monthly bulletin and make them available in common areas for anyone who does not have that electronic access. If you're a parish or school, if you're a parish, you may also include a copy of that monthly bulletin in the weekly parish bulletin, one time per month. That would saturate and raise awareness for your entire parish, not just your employees and volunteers. If you have a newsletter at your school, you may consider including it once a month in your newsletter at your school. Otherwise, the monthly bulletin for anyone who does not have a Virtus account, you can print a copy of that monthly bulletin and put it in a common area, make it available for your folks on a monthly basis. Everybody else is going to be able to see that bulletin through their Virtus account. We want to respect the bishop's directive for raising awareness and participating in continuing education without overburdening our local level coordinators. So the yearly module is tied to compliance. It is not negotiable. The monthly bulletins are not tied to compliance, and we need the parish and schools to ensure that for anyone who does not have a Virtus account, there is at least access to those monthly bulletins in paper format at your parish or school. We are often asked if we will accept compliance in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston from another diocese. A prospective employee or volunteer will come to us and say that they are compliant in their prior diocese, or they will come to us and say, I've got a background check on file with my employer. My employer is not a diocesan related entity, but I've got a background check on file with my employer, and can you accept my background check? Or can you accept my compliance from my prior diocese? Or I work in law enforcement, I work in social work, I work in mental health, I take, a lot of continuing education credits relative to this topic, and therefore, I would like if you would accept me as compliant based on these factors. The Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston will accept standard issue Virtus training from another diocese. However, if the Virtus training from the other diocese is customized in any way, it is not shareable or transferable. The only training that we will accept for safe environment compliance in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston is the standard, most recent, uncustomized version of Virtus training. All other training, we appreciate that has been undertaken from whatever entity the person comes from, but we will only accept Virtus training that is standard, most recent, uncustomized version. We never accept background checks from any other entity or organization, and we never accept policy acknowledgments from any other organization. The Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston would never accept someone else's policy. Actually, no diocese in the United States would ever accept someone else's policy. Policies are specific to your diocese, therefore they must be your policy. So we will accept Virtus if it's the standard, most recent, uncustomized version. Background checks always must be run through our system regardless of any other factors, and the policy and acknowledgments must be signed off for our diocese regardless of any other factors from other organizations. Occasionally we'll have Catholics from other dioceses who come to the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston to volunteer. And in those cases, if certain parameters are met, we may accept a letter of good standing from their Safe Environment office in their home diocese, as opposed to having them come into compliance and going through our whole process in order to be compliant to volunteer in our diocese. The main parameters that a Catholic from another diocese would need to meet in order to volunteer here under a letter of good standing from their home diocese usually involve activities that are specific events, or they're only going to be here for a very short period of time, and once this event, once this mission, once this volunteer effort that's a short period of time, once those are over, they're not likely to return to us. So in these cases, we will accept letters of good standing from their home dioceses and permit them to volunteer here. If there are ever any questions about what activities qualify for letters of good standing versus a volunteer from another diocese having to come into compliance in our diocese under our process, if there are any questions about what activities qualify for letters of good standing, please just call us in Safe Environment, and we can walk you through your situation and let you know if a letter of good standing is appropriate, or if the person or persons coming need to go ahead and come into compliance in our diocese under our process. The Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston offers awareness training for adults as part of its Safe Environment Protocol, and it also offers awareness training for children as part of its Safe Environment Protocol. Virtus provides age-appropriate lessons for all students, grades K through 12, and the lessons are taught in our Catholic schools and in our parish schools of religion. We teach 2 lessons every year. If you ever want to know which lessons we're on in any given year, please reach out to the Office of Safe Environment. We usually announce whatever lessons we're going to be teaching at the beginning of every school year. We send that information out via email. It's in our Safe Environment newsletter. But if there's ever any question as to which 2 lessons we are on in any given year for all grade levels K through 12, please just call or email the Office of Safe Environment. One lesson must be taught no later than the end of October, and the other by the end of the school year, which is usually no later than the end of May. You may also teach both lessons together. If you teach both lessons together, we ask that you teach them both together no later than the end of October. Either way works for us. Whichever works best for you, we support you. Parents are always involved in safe environment training for their children. Prior to teaching any safe environment related lesson to children, you must send an opt-out letter to parents at least 2 weeks in advance of any lesson being taught. Parents must always be given the option to opt out of the training for their children. Any parent who wishes to view the lesson in advance to see what you would be teaching their children, we welcome that. We support it. We're happy for parents to always view in advance anything we are teaching their children as part of the Safe Environment Protocol. Any parents who opt out, we encourage you to offer them the lessons to teach at home if they would like. Once the lessons are taught, you would record them. You would record your training numbers under the Educators tab in the Virtus system following each lesson. It's very easy. The prompts are very intuitive, and as you are tracking your numbers for audit purposes, you are welcome to use the Virtus system to record those numbers following the teaching of any lessons. All materials and resources for the Teaching Safety program are available under the Educators tab in Virtus. Access to the Educators tab is assigned by us here at the Office of Safe Environment at the Chancery. Most people who have the Educators tab assigned to their Virtus account would be DREs, teachers of parish school religion, teachers of religion in Catholic schools, and also local level safe environment coordinators should have access to the Educators tab in the event that you need to access as a local level coordinator that information for whatever reason. If you have someone at your parish or school who should have the Educators tab but does not, please simply call or email the Office of Safe Environment, and we will get that permission for the Educators tab assigned. We are often asked in Safe Environment if parishes and schools can supplement or replace the teaching safety lessons. The answer to that is yes, you may supplement. No, you may not replace. The 2 teaching safety lessons as provided by Virtus are mandatory in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston. You may teach those 2 teaching safety Virtus lessons each year as described in the prior slide and be done. You have met your requirement if you teach those 2 teaching safety lessons by Virtus every year in accordance with the directions from the prior slide. However, some parishes and schools like to supplement those 2 lessons. Perhaps they have volunteers or subject matter experts at the parish who are public safety officials, mental health officials. They may offer to supplement the 2 lessons with a presentation. That is absolutely fine. We respect their expertise. We respect their knowledge. We welcome our parish and schools to use the resources that are available to them to supplement the 2 teaching safety Virtus lessons for children. If you are a parish or school and you choose to supplement with written materials, that is fine as well. Again, you must include the 2 Virtus teaching safety lessons for children, and you must ensure that any written supplemental materials are in line with best practice for protecting children, and the written materials that you are using to supplement must align with our Catholic faith. And as always, we support and encourage and love for our parents to be involved in this process. So anytime your parents want to know what you're teaching their children and how you are teaching it, what you are teaching it, what are the materials you are using, who are the professionals that you are using to supplement, please always make sure that that information is available to parents. The Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston's policy regarding reporting is to always report to civil authorities first and foremost if an adverse event has occurred. The numbers for civil authorities will vary based on your location. If you believe or suspect someone is in immediate danger, please call 911. There are several mechanisms for reporting in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston. In addition to civil authorities, whether that is civil law enforcement, police, or West Virginia Child Protective Services, we also offer other mechanisms for reporting, including Ethics Point, which is a platform that is housed on dwc.org. You may go to dwc.org, click Accountability, then click Report Misconduct, and then click Make a Report. That's a third-party reporting platform. You may report anonymously there, or you may identify yourself in the contact information details section. We also link on dwc.org, or you can go there directly via the web to reportbishopabuse.org. You may call the Office of Safe Environment, depending on the nature of your concern or report. You may call Human Resources, depending on the nature of your concern or report. And we also provide reporting posters with contact information for trusted adults in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston who stand ready to receive any disclosures or concerns. As a reminder, the state of West Virginia has a 24-hour reporting requirement for civil authorities if you suspect or have knowledge of abuse or neglect of any kind. And again, that reporting requirement is not a diocesan requirement. That is West Virginia state law, and the diocese complies with West Virginia state law in that regard. Remember, if you believe or suspect a crime of some sort has been committed, or you have a reportable offense, always you are going to report to civil authorities first and foremost. We also encourage you to report to diocesan authorities. After reporting to civil authorities, you can report to Safe Environment or any one of the bishop's designees on the reporting poster. We are always in Safe Environment here at the Chancery, documenting and analyzing adverse events. By doing so, we can often see patterns developing with a specific person or persons or with a specific location. And it helps us, it aids us in our prevention efforts when we can hear from you what's happening out in your parishes and schools, get that documented, analyze it. It helps us in our prevention efforts. If someone should come forward and disclose, remain calm, especially if the person who is disclosing is a child. You may promise someone dignity and discretion, but you may not promise secrecy. Remember, if a crime has been committed, it is West Virginia law that you are required to report it within 24 hours to civil authorities. If someone has come forward and offered a disclosure and you're not sure if it's a reportable offense, please feel free to call the Office of Safe Environment or to call civil authorities. Sometimes we can, very quickly and easily help you navigate what to do in a situation. And also always remember, you can never go wrong reporting to civil authorities in good faith. Please ensure that you're displaying the diocesan reporting posters in common high traffic areas in your parishes and schools. Every year at the start of the school year, Safe Environment emails the most current poster to all dwc.org email addresses for parishes and schools. It is formatted in PDF form, and it's designed to print on standard copy paper so that you are at your leisure to print as many or as few as you need to post in your common areas. Now that we've talked about what constitutes safe environment compliance in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston, let's talk about how we are held accountable to ensure that we are doing what we're supposed to be doing in accordance with the Charter for the Protection of Children and Young People relative to safe environment. The Charter for the Protection of Children and Young People outlines an audit process that is mandatory for every diocese in the United States. There are two audit tracks when it comes to safe environment as part of the Charter. A data collection audit that is held every year and an on-site audit that is held every 3 years in accordance with the Charter. Now, our bishop loves audits. He believes that on-site auditing is a very effective way to ensure that we are doing what we are supposed to be doing safe environment wise. He firmly believes that being on the ground at the various locations on a yearly basis for on-site audits helps people to, number one, be prepared in the protection efforts for children and vulnerable adults, and number two, helps people to be accountable in doing what they're supposed to be doing regarding those protection efforts. So in our diocese, in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston, we have that data collection audit every year. It's usually in the April to May time frame, and then per our bishop, he voluntarily elects that we are on-site audited every year as opposed to every 3 years. So we've got the data collection audit April, May of every year, and then we've got an on-site audit every year, and the on-site audit can happen in any given year between the months of February and November. On-site audits also have a hybrid option. So any location in the entirety of the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston is eligible for an on-site audit, no matter No matter where you are, anytime between February and November in any given year, you can be on-site audited, whether it's in person, whether it's online, or whether it's a combination of in-person and online. The process for the data collection audit starts every year around the end of April. Actually, prior to the end of April, as local level coordinators and principals and priests, your role is to ensure throughout the year that all of your employees and volunteers are compliant with Safe Environment and that their compliance is documented in the Virtu system. Every year around the end of April, I send out an annual return letter to the bishop. This letter goes to every parish and school and is delivered via email to the parish and school dwc.org email addresses. What we do in the data collection audit is report our numbers. So what you receive that letter, you're going to fill in the blanks accordingly. You work as the local level coordinator with your priest and principal to fill in the various numbers for Safe Environment compliance for the prior 12-month period based on the compliance that you've been working on for the past year. Once you fill in the blanks on the return letter to the bishop reporting your numbers, the principal or the pastor, depending on whether you're a school or a parish, signs the letter and you return it to the Office of Safe Environment. In turn, I compile all the numbers for all the parishes and schools in the diocese, and I report them to the USCCB's audit agency. Once our diocese's information is collected, it is combined with information from dioceses across the United States, and it's compiled into an annual report, which is made available to the public once every year from the USCCB. When we have on-site audits in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston, the first thing that happens is the audit agency will set the date for the on-site audit. On-site audits can happen in the diocese anytime between February and November in any given year. So the audit agency will reach out, notify the diocese of the dates they plan to arrive on site to conduct audit operations in person. About 2 to 3 weeks prior to their actual arrival, the audit agency will generally randomly identify 5 to 8 parishes or schools to be on-site audited during the dates they've selected. They then let the Office of Safe Environment know, and we in turn notify the parishes and schools that have been selected. If your location is selected for an on-site audit, the auditors are going to be looking at several things when they arrive at your site. They're going to be looking at your Virtus queue to ensure that the overwhelming majority of your employees and volunteers are in compliance, respecting of the fact that sometimes people come and go, and you may have a person or two who are in flux, so to speak. Maybe they're getting ready to renew a requirement, or maybe you have just brought someone on as a volunteer and they're working to complete their requirements. Otherwise, the overwhelming majority of the folks in your Virtus queue should be compliant with all their requirements. They're going to be looking at that first and foremost. They will look at our files here at the Chancery in Paylocity, kind of as a cross-check, so to speak, to ensure that anybody that you say in your Virtus queue is an employee is actually on file here at the Chancery in Paylocity. They'll look at your website, they'll look at your social media sites, they will look at your weekly bulletins and any other public-facing platforms where information is available, and they'll cross-check it with your lists and what we have on file here at the Chancery. They will also conduct interviews at your parishes and school, generally the principal, the priest, the key people in administration who oversee and handle Safe Environment on a day-to-day basis. They'll be looking to see if you have your reporting posters displayed in areas that are public and high traffic. They will be looking to know if you are adept at finding all the resources that are available to you Safe Environment-wise in the Chancery, that you know how and when to report, that you know what the policies and procedure for Safe Environment are in our diocese. And they will also be inquiring to you as to your level of support and help in Safe Environment issues from us here in the Office of Safe Environment and anybody else in leadership at the Chancery level. So following an on-site audit, the auditors, they go back home and they compile the results, and they provide a written report to the bishop. And their written reports are also provided, their information is also provided to the USCCB for that annual public-facing report that gives the general public an idea as to the level of compliance in the Catholic Church in the United States. So also, in addition to the audit agency selecting 5 to 8 parishes and schools every year to on-site audit, the Office of Safe Environment here at the Chancery and the Chancery itself, we are on-site audited every year regardless of what other locations, parishes and schools are selected for an on-site audit. The Office of Safe Environment and the Chancery are audited on-site every year for Safe Environment as well. There's a whole protocol that we have to go through here also. So please know that our parishes and schools are getting audited, and we here at the Chancery level are also getting audited every year for Safe Environment compliance. Just a reminder that all audit responses and results for every diocese in the U.S., they are compiled and submitted for the USCCB for inclusion in the yearly Child and Youth Protection Report that's made public. And again, that report is always made public as well on the diocesan website. Audit results are also always reviewed by our bishop, and the auditors always meet with the bishop in person following every in-person audit. Their observations and recommendations are used to help guide the bishop, as well as the diocese's independent lay-led review board in making policy and developing best practices Safe Environment-wise. At the end of the day, passing a Safe Environment audit comes down to ensuring that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing Safe Environment-wise at the parish and school level, as well as at the Chancery level. Ensuring that you know who is coming and going in your parish or school, employee and volunteer-wise, and ensuring that they are compliant with the Safe Environment process is the heart of Safe Environment audits and the heart of Safe Environment compliance. Also important are the best practices that are in play. Posting your reporting posters, knowing where to find the sex abuse policy, knowing where and how to report, teaching the children's program, and ensuring that all of that is documented and trackable so that we can be held accountable for doing what's right to keep people safe in our diocese. At the Chancery level, we regularly try to reach out. Our posture is one of prevention and preparedness. We hope to help you in advance of an audit. If you have any questions as you're preparing, as the year goes on, we are here for you all year round. If you have questions, concerns, or issues, We are always going to want to help you before audit season so that when it comes time for audit season, you'll be ready. We do have an audit guidebook that walks you through the entire protocol for safe environment. Every parish and school should have one on file. If you don't, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to get that to you. If you are following the steps and advice and the best practices in the audit guidebook, you're going to pass an audit and it'll be fine. Now we're going to transition into the technicalities of safe environment. We have two major platforms and a fingerprint vendor that it's important for you to know about. The Virtus platform, again, is our awareness training provider. It is partly integrated with Screening One for background checks. So if a user creates an account and completes all safe environment requirements online, including the background check, the system will automatically run and log that background check. If a user completes the safe environment process any other way other than electronically online themselves, there's going to be some work for our local level coordinator to manually enter and manually document some of those requirements. But the Virtus platform is our awareness training provider, and that is where we track and document compliance. The Screening One platform is our background check provider. Every school or parish has its own login to Screening One. Screening One is not specific to individual users. Screening One is specific to individual locations. So Screening One can be used by a local level coordinator to manually enter background checks, or, as I said, it is partially integrated with Virtus if someone logs on, creates a new account, and goes through the process electronically, or renews an existing background check electronically. There may be times, again, the hiring process, for example, when a local level coordinator needs to log directly onto Screening One and manually enter information for running background check. Multi-factor authentication is used for the Screening One platform. So when you go to log in, you enter the username and password. Screening One system is going to shoot a verification code to the email address on file. You will enter that verification code, and then the system will let you the rest of the way in. And also, just to backtrack up to Virtus, remember in Virtus, every user has his or her own login and password, whereas Screening One, the login and password is specific to the location. In Virtus, every user has his or own login and password. And just as a reminder, CSI, Corporate Security Investigations, is our fingerprint vendor, and they are the professionals that come to your school on periodic rotations to fingerprint school personnel. Remember, in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston, the only folks who are fingerprinted are clergy and school personnel. Regular old employees and volunteers are not generally fingerprinted. And CSI has no platform here, and they are not integrated with any of our other platforms. As a local level safe environment coordinator, you're going to have access to the Screening One background check system through your location's login and password. Remember, Screening One access is assigned through your location. So the location has a login and a password. As a local level coordinator, you're also going to have access to the administrative section of the Virtus system. The awareness training and compliance tracking platform is Virtus. You will have local level administrator rights through your personal Virtus account. You will have an administration tab assigned to your Virtus account if you are a local level safe environment coordinator. If you don't have your organization's login and password for Screening One, but you need it, you're a local level coordinator, please email or call us. And same for Virtus. If in your personal Virtus account, if you're a local level coordinator and you do not have the administration tab in your Virtus account, please give us a call or an email and we can assign those permissions to your Virtus account. And if it's Screening One, we can provide you with the login and password. If you're logging on to Screening One, you're going to go to Screening One's website, and then you will enter your location's ID and password. The system will immediately send a verification code via email to the email address that is on file in the Screening One system. This is usually a dwc.org or a school or parish email address. You will type in the verification code and the system will grant full access. If you don't know your parish or school's ID and password, please call or email Safe Environment. And a word to our local level coordinators who job share. Depending on the parish or school size, you may have 2 or 3 local level coordinators who work on Safe Environment. If you are just a lone Safe Environment coordinator, there's just one person working on Safe Environment, you go to log in, that code shoots to the email address that you have on file and that you have access to. However, if you are a location whereby you job share Safe Environment, when that system shoots that email address, it's going to go to the email address on file. And only one email address at a time can be on file in Screening One. So if you job share and you don't have access to the email address that's on file, you're going to have to call the person who does have access to the email address on file. They're going to have to give you the code and then you go log in. What a lot of our folks who job share Safe Environment duties do is specifically only for the Screening One system. They will create a generic email that all the local level coordinators have access to. So that way, if you've got 2 or 3 people working on Safe Environment in Screening One at any given time, you know, they can log on, get that code. Everybody has access to the email address that's working on Safe Environment. No one has to call anyone, no one has to wait, and then you can, you know, get that code and enter it and get the rest of the way into the Screening One system. Again, you know, we encourage Safe Environment wise that you use your dwc.org email address. However, when you do have a job share for local level coordinators, specifically as it relates only to the Screening One system, a lot of our local level coordinators will just create one email that all local level coordinators have access to so that they don't have to call each other and get the code and then log in. You know, normally we want you using that dwc.org, but we do recognize that for folks who job share for the Screening One system, it may be more practical and more convenient for you to just have one email that you use solely for Screening One that all of the local level coordinators have access to. Once you get logged on to Screening One, there are 2 main things you're going to do. You're either going to search for someone to find results of a background check, or you're going to order. Most likely you're going to log on because you're ordering a background check. So you're going to log on to the system, complete the verification process. You get that code, that multi-factor authentication. You're going to get that code, you're going to log on, get into the system, and across the top you're going to see an option to order. When you click on order, You are going to either be concerned with selecting the employment package or the volunteer package. Remember, employment package is for anybody who is paid. Volunteer package is for anybody who provides a service at no charge. Employment, anybody who provides a service and is paid. Volunteer, anybody who provides a service and is not paid. The Screening One system is preset in accordance with our contract and our parameters, so you don't need to check or uncheck any of the selections you see. They are already preset for you. Simply proceed and follow the system's prompts. The following information is mandatory to run a background check: name, date of birth, social security number, address, and email address. If you have a person who does not have an email address, please just use the parish or school's email in place. The system will not let you progress unless you have an email address on file. Sometimes we have people who refuse to provide their social security number. They're concerned about identity theft, which we understand and respect. You may enter all zeros for the social security number if that's the case. If the person refuses to provide their social security number, you can certainly enter all zeros. However, please be advised, and the person needs to be advised, that the results may not be as accurate because that social security number is not there to act as a verification. Lack of a social security number, it increases your chances that the results may not be as accurate as if you had it. Also, if you enter all zeros in the social security number field for a person, you must include a note in the notes section of the order that the person declined to provide their social security number, and a social security number will not be forthcoming. Once you enter a person's background check, it usually takes about a week for results to return. It could take up to 2 weeks or more, depending on the court system that is being checked as part of the background check. Please keep this in mind when you're scheduling volunteers for activities. Sometimes we will have people call and they'll say, I need to drive for my child's field trip, and that happens tomorrow, and I need a background check. Clearly, that is not even remotely going to be enough time for us to run a background check and get the results back and ensure compliance with safe environment. So it's always best that you enter the person's background check, get the safe environment process, get that safe environment compliance in place well in advance of any activity that you have for your volunteers. You may log back onto Screening One at any time and check the status of a background check that you entered manually. You simply log on to Screening One and use the search bar at the top and type the person's last name. The system will tell you if it's still pending or if it is completed. If an employee or volunteer goes through the process electronically on their own through their Virtus account and they enter their background check, you will not be able to see that at the local level. You're going to need to call the Office of Safe Environment for those results. Those results do not display when they are entered directly by the volunteer through the safe environment process online. You can only see background checks that you manually enter directly into Screening One through your parish or school account. Now that we've gone through the technicalities on how to use Screening One, we're going to transition to the Virtus system, which is our awareness training provider, as well as the system that we use to document and track compliance. If you're a newly designated local level safe environment coordinator at your parish or school, please let us know in Safe Environment so that we can, number one, ensure that you have the appropriate permissions assigned to your Virtus account so that you can do your job as local level coordinator, and also so that we know who to communicate with in the event of Safe Environment related issues. We do understand that local level coordinators come and go. We can turn those permissions on and off as needed. If you are a current local level coordinator but you don't have permissions, please contact the Office of Safe Environment. Duplicate accounts in the Virtus system is something that we are always trying to keep on top of. Before you require someone to complete the Safe Environment process, please check the system to see if they already have an account on file. Very often we have people who come and go, especially as volunteers. They may volunteer while their children are in school, then their children graduate, they don't do anything at the parish or school for several years. Then some grandchildren show up and they want to become active as a volunteer again, or they retire and they want to become active as a volunteer again. They may already have a Virtus account on file that they forgot about. It's important that when someone presents to volunteer or be employed, that you double check the system to ensure whether or not they have an existing Virtus account on file or not. A new account should only be created if an employee or volunteer does not have an existing account on file and has never completed Virtus or any Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston Safe Environment requirements. And we can show you how to check for duplicate accounts, but as always, we want to avoid creating duplicate accounts unnecessarily. Duplicate accounts in the system create all kinds of problems with reporting, compliance, and things of that nature. When we find duplicate accounts in the system, we merge them to avoid any confusion and to ensure more accurate reporting for those audits that we undertake every year.
The next set of slides will walk you through various operations of the Virtus platform. These steps will help you with your day-to-day operations of being the local level coordinator at your location. The first thing we're going to cover is how to look up an employee or volunteer in your system. Now, there's several ways for us to do this. After signing into your account and selecting the Administration tab, you will notice an area on your screen in the lower section titled User Search, similar to what you're seeing in the red circle right now. This user search allows you to search by first name, last name, email, and login. We suggest to only enter the last name of the person you are searching for. First names may vary depending on nicknames, and emails often change, or people will have multiple email addresses. Using the last name is the most reliable way to conduct your search. When you are finished entering the criteria, click the Go button. You may also notice on your screen the red arrows pointing to the Show Inactive User box. When this box is unchecked, you will only be able to search the compliancy of current, active employees and volunteers. By clicking this box, previous inactive employees and volunteers will now appear in your search. It is very common for people to change from active to inactive and back again, depending on their circumstances. It is very important to conduct the most thorough search possible before instructing an employee or volunteer to create a new account. As stated previously, we want to avoid creating duplicate records whenever possible. In the green margin on the left-hand side of your screen, you will see a variety of different links that will assist you with managing your database. The options User and User Search are other ways that you can look for your employees and volunteers within the Virtus system. When clicking on User, you will be able to search for your location only, your active and inactive employees and volunteers. By clicking on User Search, this will allow you to search the entire diocese for existing records at other locations. Please keep in mind that when using user search, you will not have the ability to edit these records since they do not belong to your location. You will only be able to view them and see that they exist. After clicking on the Users option in the green margin, you will be taken to a screen that will allow you to search for individuals at your location, both active and inactive. Simply enter their last name in the box and click the search button. The results will appear at the bottom. Please note that there is also a Show Inactive User box that you can check on this screen. This will allow you to include inactive members in your search. We want to make sure this option is being used before referring anyone to create a new record within the Virtus system. The user search option in the green margin allows you to search the entire diocese for an individual. It is common that when there are multiple parishes or schools within a close location of one another, that the volunteers and employees may overlap. They may help at multiple locations or sometimes simply switch parishes. Whatever the case, a Virtus record may already be in existence for them. Since you are now searching the entire database, additional criteria fields have been added to help with your search. Just like before, we strongly suggest simply using the last name. First names can sometimes be confused with nicknames, and emails are often invalid. The one thing I do want to point out is the active section. You always want to make sure you change this to all. When conducting this search, you want to include active and inactive individuals in your results. This will guarantee that they do not have an existing record at any location before referring them to create a new record. Now that you have conducted your search and found the record that you are looking for, you may see that you are unable to edit or move the account. There are several steps you can take to add the account to your Virtus queue. The first way to add a user to your location's Virtus queue is to allow the individual to update the record themselves. Once an individual has an account in the Virtus system, they have the ability to manage their own record. The first way to add a user to your location's Virtus queue is to allow the individual to update the record themselves. Once a person has an account with the Virtus system, they have the ability to manage their own record. By clicking on Update My Account in the upper right-hand corner, the individual has the ability to change their password, update their contact information, and control the roles and locations in which they are active. In the center of the screen, the individual will see a list of all the active roles and locations in which they volunteer or are employed. By clicking on the stop sign, the individual can terminate their involvement with a location. By clicking on Add Role and Location, they will then have the option to choose a role and a location in which they would like to be active. The most important thing is for them to hit Save when they are finished. The second way to add a user to your location's Virtus queue is by reaching out and contacting an existing active location. When completing the user search, you are able to see the active locations for an individual. In the example on the screen, you will see that this person is an employee at the Chancery and also a volunteer at St. Francis Central School in Morgantown. By contacting one of those two locations, they would be able to add your parish or school onto this individual record for you. That location would click Add Role and Location, choose from the drop-down menu the role that you provide them, and then choose from a drop-down menu your location. After that is complete, they will hit Save. Once that is done, you will now see this person in your queue. What happens if duplicate accounts are found? In order to ensure that the data in a system is reliable and accurate, we want to avoid having duplicate records in our system. Duplicate records are usually caused by a number of reasons. One way is through software conversion similar to what we experienced in 2022 when we combined our two safe environment platforms. Information in these two systems did not always match due to missing, old, or inaccurate information. These duplicate records from this conversion have since been corrected. The most common reason for duplicates is not completing a thorough check for existing records before instructing individuals to create a record. Often locations will search their list for active users, but will forget to include inactive records in their search as well as records from other locations throughout the diocese. Accounts created with nicknames and maiden names also make it harder for existing records to be found. Finally, it is common for individuals to forget their usernames and passwords. Although they are just trying to be helpful and they create a new record to complete the requirement, it actually causes holes in our database. We will discuss how to help individuals retrieve their usernames and passwords later in the training. The Virtus platform has a very simple process to eliminate these duplicate records. There are a few things to keep in mind before merging potentially duplicate records. First, please ensure that the accounts are indeed duplicates and not different accounts of people who just happen to have the same name. This is especially true for people with more common names and people with family names. Please be mindful of family members who share the same name but are indeed different people. For example, Herman Munster Sr., Herman Munster Jr., and Herman Munster III. All three generations may be in the system under Herman Munster, even though they are indeed three different people. And lastly, do not merge records that are in pending status or awaiting approval. This can cause records to be stuck in the pending status if they are not processed properly. How to merge duplicate accounts. When duplicate accounts are found, the system will prompt you with the following message. This is a potential duplicate account. Click here to see the potential matches. By clicking on the blue link, it will take you to the next step of the merge process. If, however, you have two records that you believe are duplicate accounts but do not see this message, that means there is something on the two records that do not match. Sometimes it is a middle initial trying to match with a middle name, or it could be a proper name that is not matching with a nickname. Regardless of the issue, you will need to correct one of the records so that the two records are now matching. Once they match, you will see the red message with the blue link. Then you can proceed with the merge process. The last step of the merge process is when the system will allow you to choose which record to keep as the permanent record. Typically, you should choose the record that was most recently logged into. The system will show you the date of the most recent login for each duplicate account found. Once that has been determined, click the bubble next to Keep this account. After you have made your selection for the account most recently logged into, scroll to the bottom and click Merge Records and Review. If there is no most recent login information provided, please click the account that you believe contains the most up-to-date information. Next, you will be returned to the individual's record that you are accustomed to seeing. Review the account and make sure the merge process completed properly. How to assist with recovering an individual's user ID or password. This is one of the most common questions we get asked. As the local level Safe Environment Coordinator for your location, you have the ability to assist existing users with recovering their usernames and passwords. There are several ways you can assist an individual with recovery of their username or password. First, you will want to search for and open the individual's record. The main screen is the General tab. As you can see, the first line of this tab is the user ID. You are free to give them this user ID verbally or send it to them via email. If we have a valid email in our Virtus system for this individual, you may click the Email Account Info button to the right. This will send an email to this individual with instructions on how to proceed. Local level Safe Environment Coordinators who are helping an individual that has not yet become a member of their location will not have the ability to use the Send Email Info option as previously shown. However, they are still able to view and provide the individual with their user ID for their account. They can then be redirected to visit the home page for virtusonline.org and be given the opportunity to reset their password. The Virtus homepage can also be used by any individual that has forgotten or misplaced their user ID or password. From the homepage, simply click the link titled Need Login Information. The system will then prompt them for two options. The user ID can be recovered by entering the first name, last name, city, and zip code that is associated with the account. A password can also be reset at this screen by entering the user ID or email address for the individual. One thing to point out, email addresses are often shared among multiple family members. If this is the case, then the individual must enter the user ID to reset their password. As local level coordinator, you also have the ability to reset a password for an individual. Simply log onto the record and go to the General tab. Double-click anywhere in the password box. A pop-up window will appear. You will need to create a new password for the individual and then confirm that password. Press the Reset Password button. You will need to communicate the new password with the user. The system will not automatically send the new password to the individual. In the Virtus system, caution is represented with a red square containing a question mark. If you see this caution sign on a user's account in Virtus, that means there was a finding on that user's background check. Please call or email the Office of Safe Environment for any users whose accounts are showing the caution sign. We can advise and guide you as to the best practice on background check findings. How to see who is compliant versus who is not. The main duty of your local level coordinator is to ensure that all employees and volunteers at your location are compliant and to monitor any changes in their status. Looking at an individual's record is one way to check compliancy, but not always the most efficient way to monitor your entire location. Under the Administration tab, you will notice on the left side in the green margin a section titled Reports. These links provide you with a large variety of reports to help you manage compliancy for your employees and volunteers. Today, we're going to focus on the Compliance Report. Click on the first option, Compliance Reports. You will then be given a list of several reports. Click on Compliance Report again. The system provides you with multiple search options to adjust the report to fit whatever your needs are. We recommend not entering a name so that the entire location will display. You will have the ability to filter those that are compliant, not compliant, or both. You have the same option for the status of active, inactive, or both. This report is nice because it also allows you to see who will be expiring soon. You are given the opportunity to adjust the number of days until the record becomes non-compliant. Once you have determined the criteria needed, simply press Run Report. I want to point out one thing and bring attention to the Inactivate button. We ask that you do not use this option. It has been determined that it will also inactivate the record for other locations sharing the record and can skew our report totals. We will discuss the proper way to inactivate a record later in the training. Once you run the report, the results will appear similar to as you see on the screen right now. It will show the person's name and location. You may notice that the name is underlined and in a blue font. If you click on the name, you will be redirected to the individual's record. This will allow you to prompt any missing or expired components. The next column will indicate whether the record is active or inactive. Y will be for yes, N will be for no. Compliancy is represented by one of three symbols. The green plus sign means the individual is compliant and no further action is needed. A yellow yield sign will let you know that a requirement is coming up for renewal and that you might want to take action soon. The red minus sign displays when a requirement is expired and the person is no longer compliant. The expired component will be listed to the right of the sign. These records will need immediate attention in order to reinstate compliancy. As mentioned earlier, you can also check compliancy by looking at the individual's record. Simply go to the Summary tab. The top line will indicate the compliance status. Green will be for compliant, red for not compliant. Any missing components will be listed here also. The next report we are going to discuss is the Master Report. This is a great tool to see the status of everyone affiliated with your parish or school. You can run a Master Report and run it to your computer screen where you can access individual records as needed in real time and update them as you go, or you can export the report to Excel spreadsheet where you can save and view and sort the data as you see fit. In order to access the Master Report, look in the green column on the left-hand side of the screen. You will see a section titled Reports. Click on Compliance Reports. A new list will appear. Click on Master Report. The Master Report allows coordinators numerous options to filter users at their locations and create custom reports. This report will not show compliancy, however, it will show the most recent date completed for each requirement. This report also gives you the flexibility of listing requirement components separately. You also have the ability to adjust the user field shown on your report. You can make it as simple or as detailed as you like, but we recommend always including at least the first and last name. One other field that should always be checked is the All Locations field. This is needed to see records that are shared with other locations. The Virtues Corporation offers numerous training sessions that the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston does not use. In order for your Master Report to be the most accurate regarding compliancy, please ensure that you check all the following boxes indicated on the screen. As mentioned earlier, only the most recent date completed will display on your report. This is done by clicking the box next to the blue Combine all selected types into one column for each of the components. If you would like to see the most recent date for each type of component, you can unclick this box. By doing so, you will now see the most recent date for each item marked in the list below that component. The Master Report can filter users who are currently active, active and pending, or can reveal all users active and inactive for a location for a certain period of time. Please be sure to pay attention to the dates that are entered. Our Safe Environment Audit year runs from July 1st to June 30th every year. This is very helpful as an end-of-the-year report for locations. You are also given the ability to give the report a name. This way, you can save that report for further use. Lastly, you can choose whether to run the report to the screen, or you can export the report to Excel as a CSV file. During the next part of our training, we will discuss how to manually record completed requirements. This includes Virtus training modules, background checks, and policy acknowledgement forms. The Virtus system is designed for the safe environment process to be completed online and the requirements automatically documented. However, there may be times when information must be manually entered. For example, when you host an in-person session and attendees have completed the requirements on paper and watched the training video in person. Or when you are hiring someone and you have to run the background check prior to even offering them the position. Whatever the reason, any requirements completed on paper as opposed to electronically will need to be manually recorded. First, let's go over how to record the completion of the Virtus training module for an in-person session. If an individual did not pre-register in the Virtus system for the live training event, their training will need to be updated after the session is finished. First, find the individual in your list of users. Once you have found this, open the record and click on the Training tab. If there are any past training sessions for this individual, they will be listed on the screen. Below this list, you will see a link titled Add this user to a past live session. Click on this link. The primary option for completing Virtus awareness training are online or in person. But now we have a third option, reading the training module using printed materials. The printed material option is for anyone who does not have a computer or access to the internet or is uncomfortable online for whatever the reason. If an individual needs to take advantage of the printed material option, simply give them the printed version of the training module for them to read. Upon receiving and reading the material, the individual will need to complete a printed materials verification form and return it to you. The signed form should be sent to the Office of Safe Environment at the Chancery. We will document the completion of the Virtus training on the individual's record and digitize the form. It is common for background checks to be manually recorded. For example, potential employees need to have a cleared background check prior to be offering a position. When this happens, the onboarding process will only prompt the individual for the remaining safe environment requirements. To add a background check to the individual record, first find the user from your list. Once you have opened the record, click on the Background Check tab. Any previous background checks will be listed on the screen. Below this list, there will be a link titled Record a background check for this user. Click on that link. The system will now prompt you to enter the details of the background check. The type of background check will either be Screening 1, Diocese of Wheeling Employment Package, or Screening 1, Diocese of Wheeling Volunteer. There are other options in this drop-down list, but we are not currently using those background checks at this time. Next, enter the date the background check was entered into the Screening 1 system. Continue on and fill in the name of the individual as it appears in the Screening 1 system and the name of the individual entering the background check. Please include the date the background check was completed in the comment area. Finally, choose the status of the background check. When you are finished, hit Save. We are now going to cover how to manually record the policy forms and acknowledgement. The main thing to take into consideration is the date the forms were signed. Prior to July 2022, the policy on child sexual abuse covered the policy and all of the acknowledgements. This was acknowledged by signing one form. After July of 2022, The policy was split into 3 separate sections per our auditor's recommendations. The 3 forms are Reporting Statute Acknowledgement, Code of Conduct, and Policy relating to the sexual abuse of children. If the date on the policy form is prior to July 1st, 2022, you will select Policy of Child Sexual Abuse prior to 7/22 from the drop-down menu, and you will only have 1 paper form. After July of 2022, you will have 3 separate forms, and you will need to record each of these forms separately in the Virtu system. In order to record the policy forms and acknowledgements, you must first find the user in your list of volunteers and employees. Once you have opened the record, click on the Required Document tab. You will see a list of documents previously signed by this individual. Below the list, you will see a link titled Record a Document for this user. Click on that link. The Virtu system will now have you enter the details of the documents you are trying to record. First, choose the name of the form from the drop-down menu. Next, enter the date the form was signed, and then record your name in the Recorded By field. Don't forget to hit the Save button. Please keep in mind that when choosing the prior to July 1st, 2022 option, that this is only 1 form, and that the date entered must be prior to July 1st, 2022. Any acknowledgments signed after this date will need to be recorded individually. All 3 forms will need to be recorded into the Virtu system before being considered compliant. How to end date a person's record. Just remember, the stop sign is your friend. When an employee or volunteer decides to leave your location or chooses to no longer be active, you must go into the Virtu system and end date their role. This is done by accessing the General tab on the record. In the middle of the screen, you will see a list of all the locations this person is currently active. To the right of the role, you will see a red stop sign. Please make sure that the stop sign you are clicking is adjacent to your location name. Clicking on the wrong picture could end the record for another location. Many are tempted to simply change the account status on the yellow box. Please do not change this account status unless prompted by the system only after clicking the stop sign. Not following these steps will not only inactivate this record for all users, but cause report totals to be inaccurate. After you click the stop sign, a pop-up window will appear on your screen. Enter the date that the person left your location. If you do not know the exact date the volunteer or employee stopped performing their duties, just accept the date of the day you are end dating the record and click Set. An account is considered inactive when there is no longer any active roles listed on a person's record and the account status in the yellow box is set to inactive. In order to reactivate this account, you must contact the Office of Safe Environment. The last portion of our training will go over how to use the Virtu's platform to prompt people to complete missing or expired requirements online. You may use the Virtu system to prompt a person to complete a requirement electronically. Both the Required Document tab and the Background Check tab in each person's account has a mechanism to prompt a person to complete a requirement. Once you click on Force Required Document Prompt or Force Background Check Prompt, the person will receive an email with a link alerting them that a requirement is due. They will also be asked to complete this requirement when they next log into their Virtu system. Don't forget to ensure there is a valid email address on file for each person. You can still prompt the account without an email address, but the person won't receive the reminder. The requirements will still be there to complete when the person logs on. Assigning the online training module is a little different than the other requirements. Click on the person's Training tab. Below the list of completed training courses, you will see a link, Assign Online Training to this user. Click that link. The next screen will allow you to assign the online training. A list of available courses will appear on the screen. We are currently assigning Protecting God's Children Online Awareness Session 4.0. This course is also available in Spanish. After choosing the correct course, click Do Not Assign this module again. When you are finished, click Assign Training.
Just a reminder, this mandate from the bishop applies to all employees and volunteers as identified and described in the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston Sex Abuse Policy Booklet. Earlier in the presentation, we talked about what constitutes an employee, what constitutes a volunteer, the specific roles that we are talking about to which the Safe Environment Protocol applies. There's a list in the back of that sex abuse policy booklet. So when we say in accordance with policy, we are referencing that list in the back of the sex abuse policy booklet. And just as a reminder, the sex abuse policy booklet is always housed at dwc.org under the Safe Environment section of our website. Just some important reminders as the presentation concludes. Background checks are due every 3 years. We are on a 3-year renewal cycle for background checks for all employees and volunteers. Awareness training per the bishop, effective May of 2024. Awareness training we renew every year now. Please ensure that you are using your dwc.org email address as assigned by the Chancery IT Department for all Safe Environment communications. And the reporting requirement for the state of West Virginia is 24 hours. If you suspect or have knowledge of sex abuse, physical abuse, or neglect of a minor in the state of West Virginia, you have 24 hours to report to civil authorities, and we always encourage reporting to civil authorities first and foremost, and then reporting to the diocese. Please remember, Safe Environment is a marathon, not a sprint. We are audited every year, 2 audit tracks every year. It's very important that our parishes and schools and that we here at the Chancery level in the Office of Safe Environment, it's very important that we keep up on this throughout the year. Regularly checking in, periodically evaluating your comings and goings of your volunteers and employees, ensuring that any renewals are accomplished in a timely manner, ensuring that your folks are identified and documented in the VEER2 system. Failure to prepare is going to result in an audit failure, and that's not what we want. That's not the outcome that we want or that we would be looking for. Rather, regularly keeping up on safe environment operations on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, consistent basis, depending on the size of your parish or school. Regularly communicating with the Office of Safe Environment at the Chancery when you have questions or concerns, following the best practices and advice in the audit guidebook that's provided by the Office of Safe Environment from the Chancery. That's going to be the way. That's the way to ensure the safety of your children, vulnerable adults, and your volunteers and employees. This protocol exists for the safety of children and vulnerable adults, but it also exists for your safety as employees and volunteers when you are following those best practices, ensuring that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing all year long, not just at audit time. That's going to be the way to properly and appropriately raise awareness, reduce risk, and keep your people safe. On behalf of the Office of Safe Environment and the Chancery for the Diocese of Wheeling-Charleston, thank you for all the work you do to keep our children, vulnerable adults, employees, and volunteers safe. We are here if you need us. Please feel free to email or call with any questions or concerns. We are happy to help you, and we are happy to go along right beside you as you are working to keep your parishes and schools safe. Thank you again.